And this gentleman was like, oh yeah, definitely. This one's autistic, 100%. This one. And I was like, this one? This one? This one's name is Rio Luna. That was when I really started to get into the fight to realize how they just dismiss our kids like they weren't even human. They weren't even acknowledged as his name. It was just this one.
Welcome to the Managing Mental Health podcast. Join us as we talk to leading psychologists around the world about all areas of mental health, and we hear from real people that have overcome real mental health struggles who can now share hope and encouragement for us all. I'm Jamie, social psychologist, author, and trauma recovery coach. Our guest today is Layla Luna. She is the mother of a nonverbal autistic child and knows firsthand the daily challenges a family affected by autism encounters. Through the many challenges she faced after her son was diagnosed, she took a stand to become a strong voice for the autistic and neurodiverse communities by founding Just Be. An Olympic-trained gymnast who transitioned to dance after an injury, Layla is an award-winning choreographer, a professional Middle Eastern artist, and the former owner of Layla Dance Academy. She also created the Dance from Your Heart program just for special needs children. Through education, awareness, and advocacy, she works to connect families with their local community by raising awareness, creating partnerships, and providing training resources for local governments and businesses to become sensory friendly, which encourages positive experiences and opportunities for those with autism. Layla, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And that was an incredible intro. Thank you.
Yes, Rose, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us. I saw a TikTok video about a new license plate in my state of South Carolina and immediately perked my attention because I was surprised. South Carolina is sometimes backwards in social advancements, as some of us might know, but this was definitely a welcome surprise to see that something new and positive and extremely powerful and positive for the autistic community was passed. Tell me a little bit about the Just Be license plate.
Okay, well, thank you. So my son, Rio, he was diagnosed in 2010 with autism spectrum disorder. And at the time, it was very little information. It was Rain Man. That was pretty much all I knew about autism. And not only was he autistic, he's nonverbal. So that put me in a whole nother lane. And it was very difficult trying to navigate through the world and life and being a single mom and the only one that had like an artist, which I would say, no, he's autistic. It was just, there was very little information. So we worked really hard to get Rio to be able to be part of the community. But again, there's so much isolation. And then we had an incident where we were pulled over. It was not in South Carolina, but we were pulled over and the officer just didn't understand autism. It was very hard for him to understand to turn off the sirens and the lights were going after the sirens were turned off. And he went from 0 to 10 within a second. He had a sensory overload. He started biting me. I have a scar on my wrist from letting him bite me instead of him jumping out of the car and into the middle of the street. And that's where I really got this idea of like, well, what if that officer had known he was autistic and understood a sensory overload and what these individuals are going through, even though he looks absolutely typical because there's no facial recognition. I mean, that's the big disconnect with autism, is that there's no look to it. It's not Down syndrome. It's not a visible disability. So immediately, a lot of the time, law enforcement, first responders, or even just regular people think you're a bad parent and your kid's a brat and they need to be disciplined. So after that incident, I did meet at the time council member Carl Ritchie, who's now Sheriff Ritchie of Charleston County. And I just pitched an idea of like, well, what if we had a license plate with the Just Be logo, and that would alert first responders immediately that someone in the vehicle has autism, and they would know what they're walking into before it even could escalate. And he was like, no brainer. absolutely, I mean, Sheriff Ritchie knows the law. He knows exactly what's going to work for his fellow officers and how to protect them. He introduced me to House Representative Kathy Landing, and she just took it and championed it. We passed the House and Senate unanimously, bipartisan, all yeses. Within 6 months in South Carolina, it was made into law, Rio's law. And it's just, it's like the little bee that could. Sometimes you think, who am I? I'm just a mom. But when it's your kid, you have to just make sure that the world can't stop you. You have to be in that fight. You got to get in there. And for me personally, I had to be Rio's voice.
Mm-hmm.
He has no voice. I have to be his voice and the voice of all the other Rios out there. And so it's an incredible win, and we're hoping to take it nationwide and make it. The dream is that every other state will adopt it. It'll become like the new handicap symbol for each state. It is not a charity plate. You have to have the diagnosis. So positioning South Carolina is the first state in our nation to have an identifier license plate. It's a huge win, and I'm over the moon, but I'm all fired up, and I've just begun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I don't blame you. That is it is a huge win, and it always takes one person to start something, to start a fire. And
mother on a mission.
Absolutely. So we're very proud of you for doing that. And I know thousands of others in the autistic community are just excited and happy that you've been able to get this through like that. I want to go back for just a second, and we're going to come back to some of these the other implications and other ways that you're being able to use this and get this, this idea more official, I guess. But I want to go back for just a second to you yourself when your son was diagnosed. What was that like for you? I know you said, that you had to learn to navigate challenges. What was that like when you first got that diagnosis?
I think for me, it was really difficult because there's two parts to it. The one part was that I was a single mom. At the time, I was in Los Angeles, California, where I'm originally from. I was in the entertainment industry. My life was like golden. I was a superstar. I felt like the world was my oyster. And then you get a child with autism, and it just threw me off balance. It was so hard to kind of wrap my head around that I wasn't going to have this perfect child at that time, what I thought was perfect. And how was I going to do this? And it was a lot of like heartbreak. His father just couldn't understand that he wasn't going to be a soccer player. And right off the bat, everybody, when we went to go get the diagnosis and the IEP, I remember we were standing like cattle at an elementary school on a Saturday, and you had to walk into the gymnasium, and they had tables, like go to table 1, table 2, table 3. And they're like, okay, go to table 23. And there was like the school psychologist and some other doctor was there. And we sat down, and this gentleman was like, oh yeah, definitely. This one's autistic, 100%, this one. And I was like, this one? This one? This one's name is Rio Luna. He's going to go to Harvard and he's going to win a gold medal. And I almost strangled him. I was so mad. And I was starting to get upset because that was when I really started to get into the fight to realize how they just dismiss our kids like they weren't even human. They weren't even acknowledged as his name. It was just this one. Like check the box. Oh yeah, tippy toes flapping, everything's in his mouth. Oh yeah, for sure, autism. And you're like, that's my son. And that's where it really started to hurt and get that. I don't know if it was momentum or it was like fight. You find your fight song, but it was like, no, that's my son. It's not this one. And that was really when I saw how I was going to be excluded from the world. In that moment, I started to realize, wow, we're on our own journey. We're on our own lonely road. And no one's going to give us a hand up. No one's going to give us any special treatment. They just would prefer to kind of get rid of us and sweep us under the rug. And it was really hard to understand that. It was so lonely. I mean, I think I cried an ocean. And everywhere I looked, I would go on YouTube and you see those terrible videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what my life's going to be. How? I was a gymnast. I was a dancer, I was successful. And I had a father that thought we could buy our way out of autism. I mean, we had charlatans right and left. Like for $3,000, you could get an oil that would cure Rio. I mean, it was so difficult. We were trying to find solutions, answers, but then I had to just realize God has a plan, and special people get special children. At Rio, and he changed my eyes. Honestly, if I never had a son like him, I would be living in my beautiful world, walking around, I think, as a complete narcissist, probably never even realizing about other people's difficulties. I was in my own bubble, and I am so grateful that God gave me Rio because he changed my eyes. And I always say, and people are like, "Oh, where's the cure? Why are so many kids? What's happening? Why the numbers keep going up?" And this is more of a spiritual approach, but in my heart of heart, I believe they're here to cure us. That's why we keep getting more children like this. Once you get a child like this, it changes your eyes forever. It makes you more compassionate, more understanding, have empathy, more human being. And, we're a circus out there. You turn on the news, it's a circus. And then when you get a child that gives you pure love, then you realize there's something bigger than yourself. And that's what I got to realize. And I feel so grateful.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, you hit on so many important points, I think,
But it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. There's days where you want to throw yourself out the window. Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. But I think there's so many important points there for all of us to learn from, whether we're a part of the autistic community, whether we're not, and we're just observing and learning. One is that there does need to be a sense of community, because like you said, you felt all alone. And so people that are experiencing this struggle and experiencing dealing with this in their family, that reach out to somebody somewhere and look for that support that you need, because there's other people that are looking for it too. And that sense of community is important. And if you have the ability to provide that, at your community level, your school, your church, your whatever,
you need community. You need community, and you also need to, I'm not going to say that you're not going to do it. You're going to do it a lot. If anyone's hearing my voice right now whose parent is just getting that diagnosis, which is absolutely heartbreaking, I understand. You will go through those why me? Why me? Why not her? Why not him? Why me? Why my kid? That is probably one of the hardest things, is that playing it over like on repeat in your mind. Like, what did I do? Did I do? It's not that. It's really not that. It's just that soul picked you because you've got something that's going to make sure that they have a great life. It's not going to be easy. You're not alone. There's more of us than them. We just need to kind of come together. This, the core value of Just Be, I'm doing license plates and legislation. I mean, I was a professional dancer choreographer. This was not my lane. I didn't talk, dancers don't talk, we're just kind of in the background. I found my voice because of Rio, but ultimately it's just like you have to find that community and work together. And the core base of Just Be is that this is a civil and a human rights movement. Every great community has their moment in history. This is the autistic and neurodivergent moment. Our kids are going to read about this moment in their history books, of how people like Rio got kicked out of restaurants, how they couldn't get jobs, how they were isolated, discriminated against. But there will be a time where my kids will read about it and be like, come on, Mom, People like
Hmm.
when they get kicked off airplanes. Come on, mom. They weren't kicked out of restaurants. Come on, mom. They couldn't get hired for jobs. And I'll be like, yeah, there was a time. This is a movement. It's a grassroots movement. And it's not just in April and Autism Awareness Month. Autism is year round. It's not just in South Carolina. It's all over the world. So, you
Hmm.
know, say when we look up in the sky, there's not one star, there's trillions of stars. There's room for all of us, but we need to stick together as a movement and a civil rights and human rights for all these individuals. That's my true goal for Just Be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it. I agree with you. It is definitely um, an opportune moment in time, because
Yeah.
even myself, as a studying psychology for many years, heard and read a little bit here and there, and it wasn't my specialty. So of course I didn't dive in, I guess. But I would say, over the last 5 or 6 years,
Oh, yeah.
I've heard and seen so much more, many more people like yourself sharing their stories, being
Right.
open and vulnerable to talk about it, which is what we need. And I've met some absolutely amazing people on the spectrum that are out there doing advocacy work, that are doing programs and podcasts and books. So yeah, you're right on the money there.
This
It's
is
just
we're in the
this
window.
is,
This is our moment. And
yeah.
it's very interesting when, because now we have our adults that are growing up and they are telling us that they want the same thing that everybody else wants. They want
Hmm.
love. They want friends. They want jobs. They want college.
Hmm.
They want to move out. They want to own companies. They want to, they want dreams. And,
Hmm.
honestly, if Love on the Spectrum is one of the number one shows on Netflix, then we are off the bench, on the field, and we are in the game.
Yeah.
Like we are really, because many years ago, there was very little about autism. And now
Yeah. There was
autism,
what
autism.
was that one show that was on a few years ago? I don't know, maybe it's been about 10 years ago now. Was it The Parenthood?
Yeah, there was the Parenthood. There was a couple
Yeah.
others. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, to me, was a really good representation and a really good voice, a good starting point for people to
Right.
be introduced to the struggles, the real struggles that a family deals with. But at the same time, here you had the character, and I can't remember his name in the show, but the actor was amazing. But in the show, he started developing this love for photography, and it just
Mhm.
fell into place. And everybody was sort of amazed, like, wow, he's doing
Yeah.
great at this. And this is,
You don't
of,
need to
of
change the
course.
child. You don't need to change the child or the adult to fit the environment. You need to
Yep.
change the environment to fit the child or the adult. It's an easy fix. Just
Hmm.
Be's one of our missions is, we say some of our taglines is like to just be kind, to just be
Hmm.
human. Let them just be. And
Hmm.
I truly believe it's not about the disabilities, it's about the possibilities. I don't want to hear about Rio's diagnosis. He's
Right.
17. I'm aware. I got it.
Yeah.
But now what?
Yeah.
Now what? Okay. And we have to get past the early intervention component, which is really important. I'm not saying, but they
Hmm.
grow up. About 100,000 young adults that are going to age out every year. You cannot hide a whole generation of young adults in their room on an iPad for the rest of their life. We
Right.
can't sustain this. This is the elephant in the room. What are we doing? Why aren't we talking
Uh-huh.
about this? And in South Carolina, there's no ward of the state. So I have to, these parents have to outlive their children. I had a mom come to me and said her
Mm.
dream in life is to outlive her daughter because
Yeah.
she has to live for her daughter. And when you hear that, you're like, no way, we can do better.
Mm. So,
And we
so
can
from
change that conversation. We can change
right.
that narrative. We can talk about it. And maybe autism never touches your life. That's fine. You're
Hmm.
very lucky. Maybe you're that person. I've never met that person, but say there is a person that has never met anyone with autism, but then you get exposed to it. Instead of looking at me and staring and pointing or filming me or whispering, maybe through all this conversation that we're having today, maybe next time you see me struggling, you'll come up to me and say, do you need help?
Hmm.
That's what we need. We need kindness and consideration and empathy and tolerance instead of
Hmm.
the dirty looks, go, I wonder if that kid's on the spectrum, does that parent need help? That's where we begin. Then we change the culture.
Yeah, I agree with you too on that. That we've kind of, I won't say got it down, but at least it's more commonplace when we're talking about the early intervention and diagnosis and a lot of the programs, to get through the early years. Much better, still need work, but I think that focus on older or, young adult transitions and jobs and things like that. I read one program as an organization, I believe it was in Chicago, that one of their services is that's what they do, is they do provide job training, and they sort of link jobs. So they'll go to companies and say, hey, if we can bring you a trained individual, will you put them to work? Yeah. And I've seen that start to work. So that's a good idea for anybody else listening that wants to jump in the fray. That's a good idea.
We have 85% of our adults unemployed. So
yes.
And this is a corporate social responsibility. So for all the corporations and the heads, it comes from the top. You lead from the top.
Yes.
Whoever is listening that's an owner, you set the tone of what you want to put out there as, your vision for your company. So it starts with the top. And then on top of it, you need to change and be more innovative in your hiring process. You have talent out there, a lot of talent, but they may not get through one of your job interviews. They might not look you in the eye. They might have anxiety. They might be nonverbal. So you need to kind of follow the new way of trying to find a better way of hiring that would suit an individual that's on the spectrum. Because once you can get past that hiring process, you've got a worker that will be on time, that is committed, that may not be your front person, but could be in the back. And then you have to, as an owner with corporate social responsibility, you have to say, well, what does it mean to be successful? Is it $1 million? Is it a college degree? Or could you hire Rio and Rio just opens and closes the door? For me, that's good enough. For him, it gives him purpose in life. We have to go beyond the status quo of what we think is normal or typical or what is a great employee, because they're there. They are there. You could have, there's a kid in his room that might have the next cure for cancer, but we don't know.
Yeah.
They're sitting in their room for the rest of their life. So we have to be innovative. You also have to think, for all the listeners, social impact. I'm into social impact. My money matters. So you're going to go to a business. If pizza's pizza, support a business that supports Just Be. If there's a Bumblebee sticker on the window, support a business that supports a mission you believe in. That way our money matters. And if you do it for veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, pet-friendly, and vegans, then you can do it for the autistic and neurodivergent community, the largest untapped market in history and the fastest-growing developmental diagnosis in history. So our workforce is there. They're brilliant. They're usually very savants. They're not on TikTok where, they're slow hours, they want to work. They want to be part of the community. And I also feel like once we start hiring more people or families are out in public, the stigma will go away.
Yes.
That's when it's really important. So we want to be out in public, like Just Be does the sensitivity training. We train businesses to become autism friendly. The training's done by Dr. Diane Cullinane. It's online. And once the business, she's a medical expert in the field. And once they take the training, they get a certificate, and then they are asked for a pledge, and we put them on the Just Be app, which is like the Yelp of autism. So you can find businesses in your area that might have sensory hours. So I like to think 2 to 4 is the new 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Most businesses do have downtime. They have slower hours of operation. For a family like myself, we don't need to be there at 12 or 6 p.m. where it's packed. We want to come quiet. And then so imagine for a business, this creates revenue from an untapped market that would never walk foot into your establishment, but they would come and be loyal and pay money. And usually it's the whole family dynamic. It's not just like Rio orbiting the earth by himself. It's a party of 3 or 4. Imagine if you start making revenue between those slow hours, creating a new revenue stream when you would never have anyone in there, and you're paying your employees to sit there anyway. So it's a win-win. And then for our families, we're out in public. We get to go to the movies. We get to know where to get a haircut. We can go to a church and pray as a family. Just create another time or a discount or a roundup or host an event, whatever works for your business. But for families, if it doesn't have a bumblebee sticker in the window and you don't support a community, and again, you don't have to have an autistic child to believe in social impact.
Sure.
Just your money, wherever you want to put your $50 is where you put your $50. I'm like that. I like to put my money in places that I believe in.
Right.
Where I sit with,
so
so the win.
All right. So let's follow this just a little bit further. If a place, and we'll just say a restaurant, let's say they want to adopt 2 days a week or maybe every weekday from 2 to 4, and they're making this this space better for people in the autistic community to come in. What are things that practically or physically that they would do to make it more inviting?
Okay, so they would take the training, then they'll go on the app, and then they do a profile on the app, and they would say maybe from 2 to 4 sensory hours. That means maybe dimming the lights, turning off the music, creating a calm atmosphere, whether maybe they might let them skip the line, go to the front, or just be welcoming, the best 5-letter word, smile. We know when you don't want us there, trust us, and my son knows when people don't want him there. So it's just being welcoming and kind. Maybe it's a discount, or maybe it's seating them in the back where it's just not as noisy, creating accommodations that ultimately an individual on the spectrum could feel calm, could feel welcoming, and also have a great experience and create those memories. And every business knows what would work for them. Maybe a business never has slow hours, but they might say, we'll give you a discount, or they might say, you can just skip the line. You let them know that you're a B, a B member, and they can just walk you through that process.
Okay. Awesome. And you said that they can start this process on the app, the Just Be app?
Yeah, the Just Be app, you go onto our website, which is Just Be, B-E-E, the change. And then it says training. You click that and you can get right into the sensitivity training. We also have first responder training. And then we're starting a new training, Just Be My Friend. So we have about 3 trainings, but they're all online. We also do offer in person if you want us to come in and train your staff. But it's affordable, and you get to be on the app for the year. It's really great. If you just want to individually take the training and have that certificate that you're certified, you can do that. Or if you want to be a company and you say, I want to take the training, but I want to keep the link the whole year for maybe I get new employees, then you have it. So we give you a couple options, whatever works best for you and your business.
Awesome. And for people listening, I will have the link in the description. And
we're geolocator, so the app can be in any city. So if you are listening and you're not in South Carolina and you want to start this in your state or your city, we can help you do that.
Awesome. That kind of segues into my next question.
We're starting in Wyoming right now, in Sheridan, Wyoming. So that's
good. So if a person wanted to, let's just say with the license plate, if they wanted to get this started in their state or in their region, whatever country they're in, what would be like the first couple of steps that they could take?
The first steps is contact us, please. There's the contact on the email us, Layla, Layla at Just Be the Change, or contact Just Be the Change on the website. And we need a legislator, a senator, a governor, a House representative in your district, and then connect with us. House Representative Kathleen Lanning said she's open to work with anyone to help them write the bill. We have some legislation going into Georgia and North Carolina this year. We're hoping to get Wyoming. We are talking to New York and Texas, but they're in the early stages. But again, you just need to find a local representative that wants to champion this, and then we will piggyback and help you through the process. But that is the low-hanging fruit. We really want Rio's law. We want to save lives, but ultimately we want to protect our first responders because they have seconds to decide who is in that car. I know there might be stickers and there might be blue envelope and yellow dot on cars or around the frame of the license plate, but ultimately first responders, especially law enforcement, they look at the plate.
Yes.
And most of the families, even if you have a driver's license that might say you're autistic, a majority of us, like my son, will never drive. So we're in the car with him. And if he has a meltdown, people could think something's happening. If you're ever pulled over, immediately first responders know that when they see that plate, they know someone in that vehicle is on the spectrum, to turn off sirens, turn off lights if it's safe, to approach calmly, and they know what they're walking into, because a sensory overload, you don't have time to read an envelope letter. You don't have time to kind of figure out the hologram on the driver's license. It's going to go from 0 to 10. And majority of our individuals, their pupils will be dilated because they're on meds. They will lose language if they're starting to go into that fight or flight. They might run. They might try to grab the officer and see the shiny badge or a cell phone. And if you're an officer and you don't know what's happening, you got some 6'3", 250-pound man coming at you, it often doesn't work in our favor. And we've seen the headlines time and time again. And then imagine, our first responders, they leave their house every day, their families, to go and protect us. And you make that wrong decision, say you by accident, unfortunately harm someone or even kill them, your career is over. And the lawsuits or if they got arrested, the trauma for an individual that's on the spectrum. Why? We've seen the headlines. We've watched it too many times. We don't need to do that. And thank goodness South Carolina is leading the way to let all the other states follow in our footsteps. And I'm really proud of Rio's law. It's something I never thought I could ever do, but I just want it to become the new handicap plate nationwide, that every state adapts it. So if I drive to Georgia, they're not going to be like, oh, she likes bumblebees. So we'll all be talking state by state and protecting our first responders, but ultimately protecting individuals that are on the spectrum.
Yeah, this could and will save lives. Very literally. We're not just exaggerating.
No.
This is a way that can help us all. Whether, like you said, there is someone that's on the autism spectrum, whether it's law enforcement, it's just the right thing to do, and it's needed.
Yeah, they say
needed. It's not this, and I know there's some people that listen and say, well, that's not my concern or whatever, but it is eventually, and it's your family, your friends, your coworkers, your community.
It's too close to home now.
Yeah.
Everybody knows someone that has autism, and an individual with autism will have at least, they're saying, 3 to 4 encounters with law enforcement in their lifetime.
Yes.
And I mean, I think it was like 53% of people killed by law enforcement have a disability. I might be saying that wrong, so don't quote me on it. But I know it's very high like that with a disability.
Yes.
I mean, our first responders, mainly law enforcement, they're very vulnerable. And my son, he's absolutely beautiful, but I mean, within a second, he's so aggressive. So, and a person, even if they have language, they will lose language in a high sensory overload situation. So they won't be able to communicate. They might run. And so our police officers are like drug-induced delirium, criminal, like what's happening here? And I think in this day and age, in 2025, when we know so much about autism and it's so close to home, when I pitched for it, I had to speak to like the DMV committees, and I had to present and testify. And I'm like, when are we going to do this? And it's interesting because when we pitched to the DMV committee, we actually sent them a link of Rain Man. And there's a scene in the movie where they're on the freeway and there's an accident. Rain Man gets really upset and he jumps out of the car and walks off the freeway, and Tom Cruise is following him. That was in 1988. And we're still here. No plan in place. So I said, if not now, when? When it's 1 in 5, because we're at 1 in 31, when it turns to 1 in 5, or when it happens to your family? When does this become important? We need to save autistic autistic lives matter too. So we need to save them, and we really want to protect our first responders, because I mean, the heartbreak, if you make that wrong decision, you have to live with that.
Very much so. Very much so. All right, everybody. Again, all of the links and the contact information will be in the description below. Please, 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 please go follow Layla's work and the Just Be movement.
Go be go.
Yeah, get it in your state, get it in your school. There's, she has a lot of information out there, a lot of resources that are available, and all it just takes is each one of us to just do our part. Like she says, just be about it, just be an advocate, just be a supporter, just be.
Yeah,
we can all do this.
Together we can just be the change. And that's the most important. And I appreciate your time. And anyone, please reach out to us. Let's get into your state. Let's go nationwide. Go be go. And let's create a world, a black and yellow world, where we can all just coexist and live a beautiful life. That's the dream.
Awesome. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you,
everybody. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Definitely in the comments, let us know what you thought about this. Be sure to stay connected to this community of mental well-being as we all learn and grow together.